Hello, and welcome back to the FNG Author Podcast. We have a really special day for you. This is our first special guest on the show, the incomparable Lauren Moore, who is an accomplished editor. And she is going to help us navigate all things editing and what you should know as a new author looking for an editor, how to work with an editor, what an editor's expectations of you are, and perhaps some tips on how to give that editor a really workable product, because you don't want to have them folding your dirty laundry down, do you? So that's my term for turning in a bad product to an editor, is expecting somebody to fold your dirty laundry. Every writer should at least make a half-assed attempt to get their work straight before they turn it into a professional. That being said, Gary I just want to throw this out there, just had his first novel released yesterday.
Good job, dude.
It is,
which ironically was edited by our first guest.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, and that's an amazing segue into this program, because not only is that book released, but it's actually doing pretty well on the Amazon charts. So we're all very proud of Gary. And then there's Brett down there, who's still pecking away at his long, epic sci-fi adventure.
We're getting there.
But in any case, Lauren, let me get started with you. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got started as an editor.
Well, first, thanks for having me on the show. I feel really honored to be on your first ever interview. And on behalf of every editor out there, I love that you are asking these questions, because we're on your team as an author. You're authors, but we're on your team to make that book as good as we can get it. But we're also, kind of strangers on the internet. We've never met in person. We're just kind of meeting over an email or whatever. So it helps to be able to kind of talk things out ahead of time and get an understanding. And maybe we can smooth things out before the manuscript comes to our desk, and that manuscript will be on its best foot to go forward through the editing process. So hopefully that this show will be a part of making that happen. So I feel really honored. Thank you guys.
Awesome. We're happy to have you.
That's our objective.
Yes. So about me, I was an English teacher for 8 years back in the day, and I wanted to get into writing myself. I've always loved books. Ever since I was, young. I was the type that would get into a fantasy novel and just stay up all night reading, couldn't stop. That's how I went through all the Harry Potter series, the Dragon Riders of Pern. Tolkien took a little longer, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
A little, a tad, all the trees that we have to talk about and describe and go through. But as an English teacher, I'd find that, you're working with your students and it's so much fun. You get into it, but it's hard to eke out time to get your own writing done. And you look forward to the summer every year. Oh, maybe during the summer I'll get so much done. And then that didn't happen. So around 2016, there's a lot of programs on the internet for, making your services available. And I was like, hey, let's just try this editing thing. I've been working with my students with their creative writing, but let's see how it's like to work with authors. And I just started that summer. And that summer, I started to make contacts and get the work done. And my clients responded positively. And one thing led to another. And I just stayed editing and turned that into my full-time career and never looked back.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So that's where I am now. I do a lot of work with particularly military science fiction and fantasy. And now the past 6 months or so, I've been working with Athon Books. So we've been doing a lot of fantasy, and especially lit RPG is their bread and butter. So doing a lot of very fun novels that are coming out.
Now with that, Lauren, do you find, because the whole purpose of this series too is not just to be military science fiction. We truly believe fiction is fiction, and getting that onto paper is the best thing to do. And with that, do you find moving between genres for editing, do you find it difficult, or do you find it actually just words on paper and easily to sort of maneuver through it all?
Very easy to switch back and forth. There are some genres that, like you would read for fun. That would keep you up all night. I would definitely put
Mhm.
fantasy and lit RPG in that. Um, for me, before I started editing, it was probably historical romance.
Mm.
I just love a
Mhm.
good, like enemies to friends to romance kind of thing. But something that's bringing in the history, something that's got the drama. But all those things are human themes, right?
Yeah.
People are people are people, whether they're on the Western Front or whether that Western Front is on a planet, thousands of years in the future and even more thousands of light years away. People are people are people. So those themes are huge and cross genres, and also skills of writing cross genres. The fact
Mhm.
that we all love humor crosses genres. So there's
Yep.
a lot that kind of brings us together as authors.
Now, did you find like after you've worked with so many different authors and so many different genres, though, what gets you excited about a new manuscript? Like, what is like that when you get your next project and you're looking at it? What is it? Is there any tells that you're like, okay, I'm going to enjoy this, or this is going to be some work?
If they're starting off from page one and there's something hilarious that's got me cracking up right at the beginning, or there's something kind of moves me emotionally. It could be kind of sad. It could be thought provoking, but something that really hooks my attention right from the start. That's when I can go like right away. This is going to be a good book, and I'm going to love it. And that instinct has never let me down.
Nice.
Likewise, there's some other books that kind of start off pretty slow, and you're like, I don't know about this one. And sometimes they do surprise you. Like some books are a slow burner, and you just got to give it time. But other books just never quite turn it around. And that's where the revision process comes in, where we're going to just kind of work with that book, tweak that manuscript, and try to get some more of that tension right from the start, something intriguing right from the start. We can make those fixes in revision stage.
Do you find yourself
That's awesome.
doing more developmental editing sometimes on manuscripts versus like just a line editing? Do you ever get to a point where you're like, we got to fix some major problems in this?
Most of the authors I work with these days, they've been writing for a long time. And this is not their first series.
Sure.
Like Blaine Lee Pardoe, he's written like 40 or 50 books at this point. Once you've written a few books, you start to get into your own groove. And then you don't really need a whole lot of developmental suggestions from the editor. You really just need someone to give that first professional reader's eye. I think of coming up with a manuscript sort of like a sculptor sculpting, but
Mhm.
the sculptor is blind. Okay. So
Okay.
he's blind. He's making his work of art and he's all in it. He's in it deeply. He's
Mhm.
etching this thing out. But he can't see it from the reader's perspective, right? He'll never be a reader who doesn't know what the next word says, doesn't know what's
Yeah.
going to happen in the next moment, is imagining it all from a blank canvas for the first time. That's where your editor comes in. They're imagining your words for the very first time. And they're having that effect. The effect of your words is playing out in their mind. I'm a visual person. So when I'm reading, I'm imagining it all just like it's a movie playing out in front of me. I can hear the sounds, I can feel it, I can see it, or not. Maybe nothing's happening in my imagination. And then I'll pick up on that. And that's when you're going to get a comment, like, hey, I need a little more visual or something, sensory
Mhm.
details. Show me, don't tell me, something like that.
Yeah.
So the author needs that first reader Just like that first reader can give the feedback to the author, and then the author might be like, actually, that's not where I was going with it.
Mhm.
That's not where my imagination wanted. But I can tell that something is not clear about my words now because what I wanted to convey isn't there. So let me write it differently. Right. So there's this kind of like back and forth between the sculptor and that first viewer. And then together they can help make the sculptor what the author really wants it to be.
Well, usually too, you'd be I know for myself, you're the first unbiased person to read my book.
Yes.
I didn't get that buddy going, oh, that's a great job. Next Stephen King, or I didn't get, you know what I mean? It's like the first part, you don't know me. We've never met here. You're reading my book for the first time. So it's that real first genuine, impression of what you're trying to write and get out there. And that in itself is worth its weight in gold. So, and you got to be prepared for it too. Cause like you were actually really, I felt a lot of your comments on my book were actually very useful. I think I used 99% of all your suggestions because I could tell they came from the right place. And you were like, yeah, I see where you're going here. And you missed it just by this much, So that's one thing I really appreciated about my own first experience with an editor in my book. So I found it very positive.
Good. Yeah. Sorry. Most editors that I meet, one of the first things we say on like the phone, if we meet over the phone, is like, typos are out, right? We're going to ignore each other's typos. Yes, obviously, that's true. That's because most editors know they're not God, right?
Mhm.
We are not infallible. Like your book is your book. This is your work of art, not ours. So when we put a suggestion there, like that's a suggestion,
Mhm.
So but again, the suggestion could just be a little flag for you that something different's needed, not necessarily what the editor has suggested. Like a suggestion's good, but maybe it gives you a new idea. And sometimes I've had clients that are like, no, actually, this is how this character talks. He doesn't talk like that. Yes, this character made a mistake, but that's exactly what the character would do in this situation in my imagination. And they put that there, and I go, oh yeah, you're right. Or like, I can see where you're coming from, and then we just make the book better and keep moving forward.
But with that, what would you say then that most readers probably don't realize that's happening behind the scenes, especially with the editing?
I can't speak for most readers, but it took me some years to realize that the author really wants my criticism.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would feel so like a little bit I don't want to say nervous, but like put a criticism like, should I write that? Should I say that? I don't know. Like how do I put this? And then when I wrote my first novel and I took it to Ellen Campbell, who's another editor. She's been editing years longer than I am. She's one of my mentors, and I sent it to her to write. Like every single critical thing she said, I was like, oh, that's awesome. That's spot on. And again, even if I didn't agree with her, I was really glad she said something and I could make a change before it went and got published, right?
Yeah.
So the revelation for me was that yes, authors really do want the critical feedback. And even if they disagree, you just delete that comment and move on, right?
Yeah,
Just move
I
on.
notice whenever I disagree with an editor's comment, I may not necessarily follow the suggestion, but it might inspire me to choose an alternative course of action that I didn't think of before, or maybe simplify my prose, or maybe tighten up my pacing, whatever it is I need to adjust. So it's not just the individual suggestion itself, it's hey, this is an opportunity for me to make this book better.
Mm.
And the editorial process is a great way to do that because, in my opinion, a great story is not going to seem so great without great editing.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah,
you don't
couldn't
want to
agree more.
shortchange on the editing. You get what you pay for when it comes to an editor. That is very sure. Yeah, that is very true. I've tried to go cheap and it bit me in the butt. And you know what? I'm really glad we have editors like you, Lauren, that are skilled and dedicated and do it professionally instead of some, guy in India trying to scam you, which unfortunately happens a lot. So readers or new authors be warned. You get what you pay for, and budgeting for an editor is ideal. Sorry, guys,
Lauren,
I was a little off track, but I had to get that out there.
That's
No,
how we
you're good.
roll.
Will brings up a really good point in that we're living in this world of AI now, right? Where you have people trying to run things through AI. You've got pro writing aid. You've got different AI kind of programs that are out there. And talk a little bit about how important it is to actually have a human set of eyes look at your work, and it's what I got. I tried to be, as a first time author, I tried to be as good as I could and run everything through Pro Writing Aid before I turned my first manuscript into Athon. And it was one of those things where it was like I was very nervous because I didn't want to turn in subpar work, right? But the notes I got back from my editor were amazing, and to kind of what you were talking about, where it was like, oh, I didn't think about this, or this is a great point, And so how is using a human versus trying to use just muddle through with an AI? Just give us your insight on that.
Well, I keep getting that question from my brother-in-law, who's very concerned about my future career because he's like, AI can replace editors soon. And I tell him, well,
That's a hard no.
I use AI on 2 levels, and they are not going to replace me that soon. I'm actually more concerned about readers stopping reading than an editor needing to be replaced, because you're right. It is that human eye that needs to be able to take in a story and react to it as a human, to be able to give the feedback that you need, because it's going to be human readers on the other end who are leaving very real Amazon reviews that are in a very real way impacting your how view the algorithm, but how your book is viewed and what you're doing out there. So just a little bit about my process. I'll read the book very carefully, and I'm fixing it as I go. Like I'm making the grammar and the spelling, tracking changes, suggestions as I go along. And where I see stuff, I'll leave a comment on the side. And then I'll send it back to the author. And then usually, most of my clients, that's pretty good. They just need that one round of back and forth. Then I get it back from them, and I'm going to go through it a second time. But this time, I'm going to upload a version onto Google Docs, where Google Docs has their own proofreading software. And then I've got Word with Word's proofreading software. And then I'm going to go through it on the Google Docs version and look at all of their suggestions, and then go back to the Word and look at their suggestions. And then I'm making the changes on Word. So this way, I'm looking at 2 different AI softwares, like suggestions, and I'm rejecting most of them.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they're not correct, the suggestions. But some of them are. Like sometimes they'll pick up a repeated "the" that my human eyes skipped over, or a missing apostrophe where my human eyes just missed it, something like that. Often they'll suggest a hyphen where it may or may not be needed, and then I'll have to ask Grok or look it up on Merriam-Webster, and bring in Grok a little bit. So these AI software suggestions, a lot of them are just, as a human, I go, nah, we're speaking colloquially here. We're using a dialect here.
Sure.
That's not correct. But I'm also very, very thankful that these AI programs are out there, because they're going to pick up stuff that my human eyes just your brain kind of fills in gaps that doesn't expect to see, it just kind of fills it in. So it's an extra little help right at the very last stage of editing. I'll use those programs.
It's interesting. I like how you brought that up, because I use Pro Writing Aid. Actually, I believe you. I remember you talking about it on another podcast. I was
Yeah,
like,
I
oh, I
used
should
it for
check
a
that
while.
out.
Yeah.
And what I found difficult, it truly has been a game changer for my writing, especially when you can do the chapter critique after each chapter. The only thing that you got to be careful, I find, with all the AI help that's out there, is there's rabbit holes, because it's always going to find something. It's always going to find a concern, whether it's a minor concern or all of a sudden it's a major concern, even though you might have through that correction that threw at you. So AI is a great tool to help you get your writing done, but it could be very dangerous to where if you are worried too much about it, it can change your chapter, change your story, or just you lose your writing groove for that day. Because that happened to me one time. I fell down this rabbit hole and I was talking to Brent about it. He goes, yeah, well, don't do that. I'm like,
Yeah.
So it's interesting how that happens, but I also wanted to kind of touch base on how important an editor is in my own world, because I'm a fairly new writer. I don't have a lot of series under my belt, so I'm navigating every story I do is new to me, right? And with the new guy that I had for this new series I wrote, his comments were great for, like I said, he said, oh, well, that was kind of misogynistic. So in my mind, I'm like, okay. So I took another read of it and I could totally see how that could be taken. Even though I was kind of trying to go for that 60s trope of the very beautiful, but very, like, also the smartest person in the ship type category.
Mhm.
So I kind of tweaked it a bit for 2026 too, I guess, for the reader, because it's not 1965 anymore. So I found that there were some really good suggestions. Some I took to heart from this last guy, some I didn't. But I guess that just also goes to the different editors that are out there. And the reason why I bring that story up is, as an editor, what are the biggest fundamentals that you come across between genre, whether it's science fiction, fantasy, thriller, romance? What are those things that you see that an author could potentially cross a line?
Oh, so cross a line. I was thinking about this misogynist one. Is this with the Survivor's War series?
No, this is a new
A
one
different series?
called
Okay.
Project Threshold.
Oh, okay. So the thing about, so if I were a woman editor reading a manuscript and I see misogyny, am I going to go all up in arms and oh, you got to fix this? I would maybe make a note to say, hey, the reader, some readers might have this reaction. But on the other hand, what if the character is misogynistic? What
Exactly.
if he does have a lot of pride in himself for very good reason, right? But he does have character weaknesses and flaws that the reader is picking up on, rightfully so. Okay. So I don't want my offended nerves to end up changing your story, because what if that's what's supposed to happen?
Right.
What if my reaction, I have a very negative reaction to Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind, right? She is one of my least favorite MCs ever, but maybe that's what the author was going for, because she's being true to that character, right? So I could put a note on to say, hey, this is what I'm picking up on, but that's not necessarily to say, and now you need to change it, right? But it is feedback for the author. Maybe that's not what how you imagine that character. Maybe you didn't think that they had that aspect to their character, and that wasn't a flaw you were going for, right? So if it's not something you're going for, now you have the opportunity to make tweaks to the dialogue, to add something in from the narration, to add something into the description, to put in action beats. As the characters interact with each other and affect each other, you can take action beats out or add them in to kind of just subtly tweak the relationship there to make it more what you were going for. Or you read that comment from the editor and you go, wow, I didn't know that was true about my character, but it is. I didn't know that side to them was there, but you're right. It is there. And then maybe you want to lean into it because you want to give that person a character arc,
Sure.
So take the feedback, but it's just feedback. That's it.
Now, with that, do you find, sorry, well, I just got one to kind of lead into this.
Sorry, buddy.
No
this
worries,
is
buddy.
Your show.
It's all yours after this one, buddy. It's all yours after this. Just because that kind of went into the difference between a technical and emotional and instinctive writing, editing as well, right? So when you're editing a book, do you almost have to be technical, or do you let your emotions come in? Like, how do you find that balance when because you're trying to make sure the person's book is good to go and could go out and make money, stuff like that. But at the same time, you also do you know where I'm coming from there? I feel like I got lost in my thoughts there.
I don't separate them. Like I've got
No?
both
Okay.
going, full charge at the same time. Like I said earlier, I'm imagining it all play out like a movie. Like I'm seeing it all. I'm really trying to put myself in the character's shoes and kind of like be there in the moment.
Right.
And I want to help the author create that feeling, because if that is happening, we're doing our job,
Yeah.
right? The author and the editor together, we are doing that job because we're trying to create that experience for the reader, because reading is an entertainment experience unlike any other, right? Movies can't quite get to your gut like your own imagination can. One day we're going to have VR that is very lifelike. And I think I'll still say it's not going to be able to replace the experience of reading. Okay. And that comes into that. Your personal imagination is charged as a reader by the words that you're reading. The Gandalf that you picture before you watch the movie is going to be your personal Gandalf.
Yeah.
And it's going to be different from everyone else on this podcast. You're hearing and seeing a different Gandalf, right? And that's what makes it a little extra powerful. Okay. So as an editor, I've got that mode open. I'm trying to edit for that mode for the reader. I'm trying to experience that as a reader and then help the author to create that. And any little thing that jolts us out of that experience, like a sentence was unclear, or that seems like a plot hole, right? Or maybe the chapter doesn't feel like a chapter opener, or it feels like that chapter just ended and it didn't really have like a real kind of satisfying conclusion. Okay, any of those little things can snap the reader out of that experience. So we want to put a note on that as an editor, just pop a note on it, and then put it in the author's court. Now the author can look at that, decide if that's a thing, if they want to deal with that or not, decide if I know just the thing to write at the end of that chapter. Or maybe I need to come back to that. Let's keep going, let's keep editing, and then when I'm done, I'll come back to that comment, and then we'll see. So we'll work together as a team to make that experience happen.
Awesome. Thank you. Please, well, it's all yours.
No, I was just gonna mention how like your misogynist comment because you're such a horrible person, Gary. Which thank you.
You're very quiet. Everybody can't hear that, but sing it.
Yeah, no. But in reality, I had the opposite problem where my editor, the wonderful Jodie Compton, who did a great job on my Nomad series, she there was a character that I introduced as a lady, and then she was very quick to leave me a note saying, "We haven't established if she's truly a lady. Why not just call her a woman?" And that's where I realized it was a cultural disconnect,
That's a nice
because
line, yeah.
me being a Southerner, I always assume a woman is a lady until she proves otherwise. So that went into my writing, and she and I had a discussion about that. So I find it interesting that you can project your own sensibilities into your work, and somebody not necessarily take issue, but somebody like, "Hey, what's this about?" And then it makes you think. You're like, maybe I should introduce her as a woman and then establish later on. Because I think that if I remember correctly, the character in general was not ladylike in the end. So, yeah, I went with a suggestion.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think what should happen in reading was happening with your manuscript in that instance. Okay, so you use a word like lady, and you use that word because you've got like culture, You've got a whole cultural backing that's bearing down on that word. And then the reader's picking up on that like she should. Okay, so your narrator can be one of two people. It could be your main character is kind of talking through the narrator, in which case she's kind of using the word lady to talk about herself. So she's using a word to reflect how she sees herself. Or the narrator is like a side character. And maybe that character isn't ever like present on stage, influencing things, but they have their own voice and their own perspective on the characters they're talking about. So maybe that character, the narrator, is Southern too. And he also has that same opinion, or she has that same opinion, that a woman is a lady until they prove otherwise. And this main character is a lady until she proves otherwise. And look, she did.
Right.
So you can think of it in that terms too. The narrator has a personality. Now your editor is picking up on that, and she brings that to your attention. She's like, "Is that what you're going for? Because if you're going for it, great. But if you weren't, it's accidentally coming through, and now it's going to make the reader go, huh." And if you want them to do that, then good. But if you don't want them to do that, then just change it out for woman, and then we're good. It doesn't happen. You're all good.
No, that makes all the sense in the world. Go ahead, Brent.
Lauren, you've mentioned a couple times, so like you talked about a stage, you talked about seeing the movie in your head, and audio is a huge part of writing now. Have you noticed that writing has changed to format to more of an audio friendly thing, or is writing just writing and the we're all expected to kind of make that medium happen at some point, no matter what the words are?
That's a really good question. And as I I've been on Audible for about 10 years now, and I've been looking for that and wanting to see if it would change. And I think some authors are more attuned to the sound of the words and to the rhythm of the words and to the music of words. And that's kind of where they are naturally as people, and it naturally comes across in their words, and then it'll come out in the audiobook too.
Sure.
Especially with like the talent that's out there now with audiobooks. They're not just reading the books, they're performing the books. So if you as an author are aware of that, you could be thinking about that as you write, and then definitely in the revision stage when you're kind of like editing things, you can tweak your words with an ear for how the words themselves sound, for how the sentence sounds, for how the length of sentences impacts the rhythm throughout a paragraph, or voices, right? The different voices and accents that a character can have and that your audiobook performer can perform, that can really change the experience. And as a fan of Mark Twain, right? Other authors from the 1800s that were really aware of how words sounded and how you could create a rhythm to get throughout the page to get the reader caught up in your story. I've been hoping for that, and I see that in some authors, and some authors really, it's not their thing. That's fine. That's fine too.
I love Cormac McCarthy. I will never be Cormac McCarthy, but just the iambic pentameter of his writing is just amazing to me. And I look at that and I'm like, I aspire to that. I'll never be there, but it's so cool to see people be able to do that kind of thing.
You're not going to be that, but you're going to be Brent Gaskey.
True.
And what can he write when he's having fun?
Yeah.
Right? When you're really having fun and when you're in the zone and the words are flowing, what comes out? And what you will create as you keep on writing, and the more and more you write and the more you get into that flow state, AI can never compete. AI can write really great prose. It truly can. But it's not going to be what a human can create through their own blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
So keep going.
That's a great point, because when you're doing your editing, like, how to put this? Like the concept, the plot, and the character are core to every book. But what would you say is the most important, or are they all equally just as important while including that authentic feel?
I they are all very important. So I saw one of your questions towards the end was like, what do authors obsess over? And I was going to say
Everything. We
probably
obsess over everything.
Yes, everything. Everything we talked about in the show so far, authors probably obsess over. Because you want to get the manuscript written, right?
Yeah.
And if all of these
Mm.
considerations are stopping you from just getting words on page is the whole thing. Okay, so
Yeah.
throw them out. Don't worry about them, but just get them words on page. However, when I get manuscripts as an editor, sometimes the plot is wandering so much. It's like, oh, you're going to lose readers. They are just going to put the book down and go do something else, and they're not going to pick it up again. I'm sorry. It's just a sad state of affairs. You as an author aren't competing against other authors. You're competing against other things people could be doing in their free time. So you got to capture their interests. So you can't wander. All right. So I might get a manuscript that's doing a whole lot of wandering, for example. And I'd be like, we're going to have to cut chapters out of this. Or we're going to have to rewrite chapters and get the plot moving quicker, get to the action quicker. Or all of your characters sound like the same person, because guess what? They are. It's you.
Yes.
We got to give them all different voices. And you've got 500 pages,
Yeah.
of dialogue. And in military science fiction, we have a lot of conversation. I'm not sure why some authors like to have so many meetings, but we've got a lot of meetings.
You called me out on that.
We've got a lot of dialogue, and a lot of the characters seem like the same person. So.
I can answer that for you, because most of us are retired military, and every meeting we've ever been in could have been an email.
Why are you putting that on your reader to read?
You're making them sit through the same thing.
Yeah, they need to know if they want to feel what it's like to be in a military science fiction. They got to take the good with the bad.
You get the PowerPoint on the.
Yeah. At least we're not like critiquing them for not wearing matching socks. So.
That's what I assumed was the answer, was if I was in the military, I would know why there's so many meetings, because this is the way it works.
Well, you got to get the
This is
information.
truth.
Well, you also got to get the flow of information and the planning, and a lot of like yes, action's important, dialogue's important, but I find with some authors that I love, I'm like, well, how did you get from this point to this point? Now, maybe I'm just a bit more of a purist than I'd like to admit. Although I know how they got to that point, maybe I want to hear a bit. And I think that's where I know myself I'm kind of struggling, because I took that point to heart. That and Action Beats, on my first book that you did, very, very to heart, to the point where it's actually in my editing to make sure I hit my action beats.
Good.
But yeah, that's huge. So I wanted to just kind of get that out there, because I know how important it is, but it also how much it affected me.
Yeah,
I think as an Intel guy, you just like PowerPoint. You just like slide decks, and you just that's your go.
I don't know how it is in the American military, but in the Canadian military, every Intel guy is more proud of the trade they came from than the one they came to. So you will not meet a Canadian Intel guy who will not tell you that he was a combat engineer first, or infantry, or something else. They were always something else first, because that's just the way it goes.
Well, I think with meetings and needing to convey information to the reader, you can take the aphorism "show, don't tell" and flip it. Sometimes you need to tell, don't show. And then you can just have the narrator cover a whole lot of ground real quick by the narrator saying, dot, 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 this is what happened, dot, dot, dot. Just make those connections. And that's often at the start of a new scene. You can have a real quick one sentence or two, telling, don't showing, not showing, and then keep going.
Well, with that then, kind of falling into, what do you find for what dialogue feels authentic, especially like during tense or emotional scenes, and or mistakes authors make where they're almost trying too hard to make it feel authentic?
Authentic dialogue. I think that really comes down to the author having a sense of their characters before they start writing. They can see that character, they can hear that character, they know that character. And maybe there's little shortcuts that authors use, like they might have another character from another book or another movie or someone they know, as like a kind of a tab in their head, and that person is that person. And then they because they know that person, they can be really true to how they sound. And then they're just true to how they would interact with each other. And then get that out in the manuscript. Then the other thing I would say is you can study other authors that you like and see how they do it. So, like, I love Jim Butcher. I think he's, with his Dresden series, he's just the master at making those characters and situations come alive. So I took one of his short stories and I took out like highlighters of different colors and I like highlighted, here's dialogue sentences. Here's descriptive, where he's describing sentences, and I use a different color. Here's narration, where he's narrating stuff. Here's action. And then I just colored all of those different sentences and then looked at the patterns. And it's not flowing in any kind of regular rhythm, but what you can see is that he's using different kinds of sentences all over the place. He's never using just a whole lot of one kind of sense. Oh, and reflection. Reflection is the fifth one, whereas a character is reflecting in their head about what's going on. Maybe they're anticipating stuff going to come, or they're thinking back on what's happened, or how they feel they're processing what's going on. You want to have a balance of all of those different kinds of sentences in your dialogue to make it feel authentic to the reader. If you've got just too much of one kind of sentence, maybe it's just dialogue, then it feels like they're reading a script, where I feel like I'm reading a script and not reading a novel anymore. Because what's going to be happening is you're going to be looking at each other's faces, right? And you don't necessarily need to say that Bob looked at Sally, but from Bob's perspective, how is Sally's face reacting? What's going on in her eyes or in her face or in her body posture, right?
Right.
All that's coming into play in a scene, and you can bring it all in. It's almost a question of what can you leave out, right? Because you don't want to say every little thing. But yeah, bring in those different kinds of sentences to flesh out the scene.
That goes back
That's
to
awesome.
our just so you know, Lauren, we're starting a thing where every podcast we give a tip at the end of the show for help, for writers. And last week it was about character development, just a simple way where you take a character and you assign at least one flaw and at least one motivation and use that as a baseline to develop the character. Just as a simple tool for a writer that may be new to character development. So that was our tip from last week. So that really kind of touched on it pretty well.
Perfect.
But you took it to the next level, and that's why we're doing this. We're bringing people on that are smarter than us.
Well, I did come up with it. Jim Butcher, he said the same thing. He gave that same tip. He said, give them a flaw and then also like a one-word visual cue that you can use for that person. And maybe you use it a couple times throughout the novel. I don't know if he said a couple times. It seems like with certain characters, he repeats it over and over again. But as an editor, I'm saying a couple times.
A couple of times.
A couple. Don't reuse the word "live" 8 times to describe the same female. Maybe twice or 3 times.
Yeah, repeated words is a big issue. I know I had that for myself. I think you said you've said this 87 times throughout the entire book. And I'm like, yeah, but it flowed so naturally.
Well, that's because it works naturally.
Because you don't think that way, right?
And how long did it take you to write that book? Did it take you a year?
No, 3 months.
Oh, that's really good. That's really fast.
Well, I'm retired, so this became my job. So
that's still
I'm very
really
lucky.
fast. But but for 3 months, every day you wrote that, and every day that word felt natural, as it should, right? But then what that means is at the end, you got the same word 87 times. And then the
Yeah.
reader's going to read it in one go. So now we need to kind of like, now in the revision stage, that's where we're going to be cognizant of the reader's experience, and we're going to try to say it a little differently.
I read a book years ago, and I think...
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I read this book years ago, and I think they used the word barv like 47 times. Like it was every 3 pages the word barv was being used for this guy.
What?
I was like, oh, come on, man. Just pick something else. Use a dictionary. Let's go.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. And see, years later, you still remember. You still remember that. Yeah. Editing.
Now, with like over a decade of editing, and I'm not trying to age you, just saying that's experience, it's an amazing experience that we all benefit from. I was curious what you're seeing now, because as society changes, genres change, and we try to add stuff like that. What are you seeing now that's exciting you for genres, either splicing genres together, or like you mentioned earlier, lit RPG is very exciting. What is it about these newer genres coming out that make them so appealing to readers out there, in your opinion? Or what do you personally, and what do you find exciting about all these genres being mixed together and stuff?
Yeah, mixing genres is what I'm excited about with the future of literature right now, with the trends that's changing right now. And part of it is we've had so much delight in different things in our lives that we have in common, right? Like a lot of us by now have played World of Warcraft or a different game similar to that, where you're immersed in the world and where you're meeting other players. My older brother, he met a lady in Asgaroth and then flew out to Utah, met her in real life, and married her.
That's amazing.
So
That's awesome.
we're making very real relationships and friendships over these games, and that's an experience that we have that hasn't been in novels heretofore, but now is. There's other things like anime. Like we've spent maybe decades watching anime, and you've got a whole love for the tropes that are in there and the kinds of stories that are told, and also the very striking graphic scenes that play out and the emotions that come with it, and the deep, heartfelt stories. Now anime is kind of coming into fantasy novels. So we're seeing a lot of blending of the things that we love about life in different realms that have been outside of the book world before, but are now being invited in. And authors are feeling free to just kind of mix those things, mix those tropes, mix those experiences into their writing, and they're having a lot of fun. And it shows. It's showing in the manuscripts that I'm reading, especially with Aethod books. They love that genre blending kind of stuff. They encourage it, and they're able to sell it. So not everyone can, right? That's the tough part with writing. The author world is like, oh, well, you got to sell the book later. Okay, well, the people are buying it, but it's tough to sell it.
Will
so that kind of leads into one question I have.
I was going to say, Will is really wanting to write a moose romantasy series, and so we're trying to talk him off the ledge with that one, but it is where it is. So,
hey, love is love, man.
Sorry, Jerry.
I just had
Gary, I interrupted.
I'm just saying. I did pet a moose in Alaska, and I've seen one in Norway, and it is my favorite animal. But yeah, and I did include a moose in my latest book, but as just so I could end the chapter with, and somewhere off in the distance, the moose was wholly uninterested.
Oh, I love that. That's great. See, you got to put the things you love in your story.
Yeah,
that's great.
Then Gary wrote a great extension to that. Not Gary. Brent did something about the moose reflected on his racial memory, and the humans used to have sticks and now they have thunder weapons. The humans come and go, but the moose will remain.
Oh,
who wrote that? That's good. That's good stuff.
Good.
Yeah, we're hoping to have him on the show someday. One thing I did want to throw in there to bring everybody back. It's like herding cats sometimes with these two. Do you see a difference in manuscripts from freelance or ones that come from publishers like Athon?
Well, I mean, somewhat. So Athon and Wargate, they've got, they're gatekeeping. Is that the word? They
In a good way.
know what sells, right? They know what they can sell. Okay,
Right.
so they're not saying this should be literature or not. They're not saying this should be published or not. They're just saying we know this kind of book we can sell, and we can sell it really well. So they will accept those novels, and then those novels will land on my desk, and they're gonna be like, need some work. Maybe they'll give some feedback about how to fix it and make it better. Or it's just take it to another publisher who can sell the kind of book you're looking to publish. They're just being honest. This is the kind of book we can sell, and we just can't. We're not seeing sales on other kinds of books, but maybe other publishers are. So, and then as for freelancers, I get authors from all different stages in their writing journey, coming to me and looking for help where they're at. And I'll be honest with them.
Sure.
I'll tell them, hey, I've written a nonfiction book for authors, and I've got 2 novels. Is it 2? And a couple more that never got published. But so I've written some novels, and they're not selling great. They're not really selling. They're out there, but they're selling very negligibly. Yeah. So just, if you want to write, we can make your manuscript better. I can take this book and I can help you to improve it and to make the story more vivid, more striking to the reader. I can get your characters' voices to be really true to who they are, and we can make this story tighter. But I cannot promise sales, right?
Mhm.
I can't even promise it to myself, right?
Right.
That's just the truth of the industry. That's, at some point you've got to kind of accept that and keep writing anyway if you want to be a writer. A writer writes.
Yeah.
So you just
Right.
gotta keep making the book as good as that book can be. Yeah. Oh, and then I've had some freelancers come to me that are or freelance authors that are just fantastic writers, and I'm like, I love this book so much. It's ready. Let's just fix up the last 2 typos. Let's get it out. But I couldn't tell if it was published by Wargate or Athon or them themselves. They're just kind of at that level. So
Yeah.
the gamut.
So, one last question for you that I have is, what is the coolest or most unique concept you've encountered in a manuscript that just made you go, yes, this is why I'm doing this, or you know what I mean?
That is a really interesting question. I'd say right off the bat, Galaxy's Edge got me to fall in love with military science fiction. And again, I was coming from like historical romance is my jam. And then they changed my mind just because they had such heart-wrenching stories, but told in a really exciting, imaginative world. That's what fantasy and science fiction can do. Supercharge your imagination by all the stuff that can happen.
Yeah.
So that's one answer. But the one from Athon recently was, I had a book series, and from the first book, I didn't realize it was going to be a Groundhog Day story. I saw that the manuscript had like 600 pages. But I saw and then I know nothing else about the plot. I start reading it. The girl, her world is destroyed in chapter 1. And then she ends up being time transported back to the first day of the book. And then her mission is to save the world. It recycles and recycles and recycles because she keeps failing. And partway through, I'm like, this is a bold choice on the author's part to have a Groundhog Day plot, right? because wouldn't that get old, just like it sort of did in the movie? It does for the characters. But this author was able to like build so much on the world anyway, or maybe because of her ability to time travel.
Sure.
He's bringing in different skills, different characters. He's making the plot very complex and complicated. It ended up being one of the most complex plots that I've ever encountered. And yet he did it with this Groundhog Day kind of setting for the basic setting
Okay.
for the plot. So I think that sort of thing where an author proves me wrong, right? Where my initial instinct is like, oh, that's not a good idea. And then he makes it work anyway. It's like, wow, that is so cool. And that's the kind of book that you do remember for the rest of your life. And you do remember that experience just because it's like so skill, like to be able to do that. So again, like if that author had come to me and said, hey, here's my outline for my plot. What do you think? I probably would have said, don't write it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Groundhog Day fantasy series. Are you kidding me? It's going to bore people because you're doing the same thing again, again, again. But that advice would have been flat out wrong. I don't know how he overcame that challenge because that is quite a challenge, but he did. And because he did, I'm like, oh, that's amazing. So,
Cool.
yeah. So you
That's
just
awesome.
heard
Thank
all
you.
this advice from an editor. And now she's saying, if you think you're right and your editor's wrong, maybe you're right.
Will, did you have one more question?
No, I did not. Man, Gary's list of questions is putting us all to shame right here. I
Yeah,
feel
he-
woefully
Outlaws.
unprepared. Yeah,
Yeah.
the intel non-commissioned officer in Gary is really, oh yeah. Me,
Was it
I
Spaceballs one?
oh yeah. I either blew stuff up or put them together in the army, whereas you
That's how I
actually.
started. I blew stuff up in the Army. Then they made me
Fun.
Air Force Intelligence, which is an oxymoron.
Lauren, did you have anything else you wanted to cover? Anything that we missed that you got to get out there for people to hear?
I think one of your questions is like, what would you say to the disheartened author?
Well, the
who's
one
like
struggling
really,
with self-doubt, rejection,
yeah,
burnout, all that. Yeah.
yeah. And my thought when I read that was like, take a break. If you need a break from writing, take it. You're more important than your book. A
Yeah.
book's just a book,
Mhm.
You are more important than your book. All right. So
Absolutely.
if you need a break, take it. But if writing, for sure writing's what you want to do. And that's what you're called to do, that's what you're going to do. So take your break, but put a time limit on it. Maybe your time limit's 1 week. Maybe it's a month or 2 months or 6 months or a year. Just put your time limit, whatever it is that you need, and then get yourself sorted. Maybe meet other authors. Maybe read books that you love and that are inspiring you. Take your notes. Write down when you get your thought about your story. Write it down. Maybe you're keeping it all in a book or something. And then when your time limit's up, your time that you've allotted to yourself is up, then get to writing and then just write at least a sentence every day, just something little every day, and then just let the process take hold.
Stay in it. Will,
That's
hit us with the
awesome.
tip, and then we'll wrap up and get out of here.
Oh yeah, every week we like to finish with a tip for authors, and Lauren may have something to add on this one. But today's tip is setting objectives for your chapters. Don't write fluff. Don't just sit there and pants the whole thing. Brent actually has 3 cool questions that he asks himself every single time, and I'll let him get to that. But basically, as an old soldier, I don't want to. I don't want to put any work into anything without a plan because it's just going to double work. And so, what you need to do when you're starting each chapter, what do I need to do with this chapter? Am I developing a character? Am I setting up a hook? Am I pushing the plot forward? Am I introducing the antagonist? Something. You have to have objectives so you're not just writing crap, and you give the reader, respect the reader, give them what they need to drive your story forward. So that's the tip. Set an objective for every section of writing that you set out to do. And multiple objectives are great.
Yeah,
Good job.
that's exactly how I write. Actually, I'll take an outline, and then I have one sentence for each chapter. Usually, I think there could be more, but at least just one little sentence. And then I turn that into chapters, and then I just start writing each one. That's it. That's a great tip.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Fantastic.
I'm gonna save my 3 questions for another time. We'll talk about those on a whole other podcast. We'll give them the hook, and now they got to come back for the 3 questions. So, hey, Lauren, thank you so much for being with us. We certainly appreciate you being our first guest, and we learned a ton on this, and I hope this is super helpful for everyone out there who is kind of struggling to go through their first initial, how do I become an author? How do I do these things? And I would say I went back and watched one of your guys' videos from like 7 years ago on the Keystroke Medium side, and there's just such great pearls of wisdom to pull out of there. So go back and watch those videos too. That was exciting for me to go back and kind of revisit that. So again, thank you so much for being on. We appreciate you, and hope you have a great day.
Thanks for having me. Have a good day, everyone.
You too.